At SagePresence, we are always talking about how to tell powerful stories, how to communicate what you're thinking, how to organize your thoughts. And storytelling is one of the most powerful tools for articulation and all of those other things. I'm here to talk about when not to tell stories, not to think stories, not to build stories. What stories do is they take situations, objects, people, circumstances, and turn them into meaning. When we're telling stories, we're partially in our mind's world. I guess you're always in your mind's world because you're a brain trapped in a skull. We always process in there, but when we're building stories and putting meaning around things, we're actually being more in our head, less in the actual moment. So a premise here for me is that actual experience really happens in the absence of building a story around what you're experiencing. We often see something and start building the story right away. And my particular concern here is the autopilot of story building. So let me just make up an example. You walk home from wherever you were, you come to the front door and the door is open. What does that mean? Your mind starts building the story. Someone might have entered. Someone is in the house right now. Your emotion centers will kick in and you're going to be going through an experience of a possibility, the possibility of running into something dangerous inside of your house. Mental thought, heart, feeling, all of this experience is actually experiencing a hypothetical future. You are no longer in that moment. You are in the potential moment of a potential future, and you're going through the emotional experience of that. Then you enter your house quietly and discover, you just left the door open, or the dog pushed it open, or something like that. And you weren't in a reality, you were in your own fiction. So that's to the point that we just build stories automatically. We tell stories in real time in our minds, no matter what's going on. That autopilot can be dangerous. There's a couple times when the practice of just not building a story can be useful. One are the negative stories that your mind loops into. So you walk outside and you see your overgrown hedges, and your brain instantly starts processing that the neighbors are starting to get upset and they're probably judging you, and somebody might be calling the city and you might get a fine for letting your hedges get out of control. And at the very least, they're looking down on us. I've got to take care of this. I've got to fix this right away. Maybe you do need to trim your hedges. But that's a story that your brain is building as you just walk out and see your hedges. Now, imagine this differently if you start pulling the story elements back. In the story that you're crafting just from looking at the overgrown hedges, you are facing judgment from neighbors. You've got to fix your hedges so that you will be accepted in the community, something like that, so that your neighbors will view you well. You would not have to see all that story. You could come out and see, oh, the hedges are overgrown, from which you could theoretically go and trim them. But you could pull it back even more. You could just say, hedges. I see hedges. You don't necessarily have to see them as overgrown. You can simply see hedges. So if the first thing that you can do is get out of the negative loop by not allowing a story to form, the second thing that you can do is be more in the moment by not telling stories, by not building stories, by not applying or assigning meaning to things. The purer experience of life is observing and processing what you see without putting meaning on it. Maybe you put meaning on it later. But I can go see that same set of hedges and instead process color and texture. I can look at the hedges and in my mind, I can feel them. I can feel their texture. I can see their color. And that's simply an experience of the hedge. This is it. This is its color. I can feel it. I can imagine its texture. And if you look around your world and try doing that, just really experience the textures and the colors and the things around you, your mind is processing in the moment as opposed to being yanked into the future or pulled back into the past. You can be in the moment. A third time not to tell stories is when you're finding yourself anxious or overwhelmed. Overwhelm is when you start seeing the stories attached to everything. There's the dishes that need, there's that laundry that needs to be, there's my computer, I've got to check my email. And you start to process all of these different stories. Now, instead, there's a computer, there is the laundry, there are dishes. Those are just things. So stopping the story building around things in your world can help reduce anxiety or overwhelm, because usually anxiety or overwhelm is mental processing of a bunch of issues. It might not be just things to do. It might be problems you have with people or the issue you have with your friend. Things that you're processing are giving you that anxiety. You're busy building stories, to-do lists, actions that have to be taken, problems that you have, and really, there's a wall, there's a door, there's a window, there's a person. Observe the things around you and escape that anxiety loop. The fourth reason not to tell a story is discovery. When you can observe without assigning meaning, you might find something that you weren't looking for. So around you are things and situations and people. It's not necessarily objects to find. It could be information to listen for. When people start talking, we start building the story of what they're saying. And if we can stave off the story building and just hear what comes out, we might be mining for new information. We might get something that's a discovery. We might realize something from not building the story around it. A fifth reason to avoid storytelling is intense focus. When you're trying to focus and get something done, that is actually a middle of a story. That's action. I need to do this thing. And you start doing this thing and little impulses come into your mind. Something distracts you. You see something off to the side and you start forming stories around that pull you away from the focused task. When I'm really focused on a task, I don't want to be in a story. I want to be in an action. I want to be focused on the action. It might apply to a story, but I don't want to think about it. So I don't want to be doing the action while I'm worrying, like I'm writing a proposal and I'm worrying about whether it'll be done on time. I'm worrying about whether they'll like it. I'm thinking through, what if we get this job? I actually want to just focus on writing the proposal. So stopping the storytelling can help you focus on a task. A sixth reason to not tell stories is stopping the storytelling in your mind can help you deal with sensitivity. People say things and they embarrass you or hurt your feelings. I'm an uber sensitive person. I'm very easy to have an emotional reaction, but when my feelings are getting hurt, that's an indicator that a story is forming. I'm forming a story that I said the wrong thing. Now I should be ashamed. The shame experience is because I've caused a bad thing and I'll be looked at poorly. And then eventually I'm going to be cast out of the tribe and I'm going to be alone and no one will ever talk to me again. I'm building some story which is negative. And when I just stop storytelling, the emotion goes away. Just go into observation, go into objectivity, go into this moment. Because unless you're being harmed in the moment, which would be the experience of pain and fear in a moment, most of the time, the pain and sensitivity we're going through, the shame or embarrassment or guilt, whatever it is, that's not in the moment. That's in our story. It's in the story we're building. Well, we could just be in a moment. The bottom line here is not that storytelling in your mind is bad. It's actually very human. It's the lack of intentionality which gets in your way. You'll never really stop your mind from thinking and processing that way, but here's what you can do. You can get more and more intentional and aware of when you're story building and when you're reacting. And the good place that you can end up with is having a lot more of your life in the moment, free of the burdens of possibility, and actually just enjoy being alive. You don't necessarily have to meditate. You don't necessarily have to deep breathe. Just suddenly go to observation, stop the storytelling, and experience the sights and sounds around you.